this point in the training, we'll take a closer look at ADHD and help you to better understand the characteristic behaviors. Children who are diagnosed with ADHD aren't going to look the same. Every child will exhibit different combinations of behaviors and will fall somewhere on a spectrum ranging in intensity from mild to severe. It's important to understand that there really is no one-size-fits-all approach to working with students who have ADHD. A proactive understanding of the triggers will help to develop activities or lessons that support students with ADHD. While it is important to make accommodations for different learning styles and generally to avoid teacher talk so students don't get lost, it's also important to challenge students with tasks or skills that they might struggle with, like following directions or paying close attention to detail. For example, students with ADHD who struggle with inattentivity, which is described here, will need to develop certain skills in order to be successful in life. You can teach students the importance of following sequential instructions by doing a game or a puzzle, while also making accommodations by giving instructions verbally as well as writing them down. You can create lessons solely devoted to time and task management, or organization, or even reading for context clues to get evidence from the text. These valuable skills will help all of your students succeed in school and are often overlooked during the traditional school day because of time constraints. Students diagnosed with ADHD often exhibit 6 or more of these behaviors. Read through the list of characteristics describing inattentivity and consider students in your classroom who struggle with these behaviors, regardless of whether they have been diagnosed with ADHD or not. Hyperactivity or impulse control is typically the most identifiable behavior of ADHD. You might think of students in your program who constantly fidget or find it extremely difficult and sometimes even painful to remain seated when it's expected. Again, it's important to keep in mind that in many cases, the students can't help it. Educators will take a step back and think about their students or their classroom layout, and even their own teaching practice, to reflect on what they could be doing better to support these students. The accommodations you make in your classroom design, or your group arrangements, and even your communication style, will have a positive impact on the students with ADHD, and likely will have a positive impact on the entire group of diverse learners. Design your lessons to incorporate a mix of sitting and standing, as well as call and responses with hand motions, and make modifications for students with ADHD by assigning roles and responsibilities, like a cleanup captain or box checker offer. Meet with your students one-on-one to discuss the importance of controlling their impulses, and come up with strategies that work for each child. One child might be allowed to stand quietly in the back of the room, while another might prefer squeezing a stress ball while the teacher is talking. Students who struggle with impulse control may not realize what they're doing. They might blurt out answers or interrupt people, and it can be hard for children to self-regulate. Educators often fall into the trap of calling out these students by name. In order to avoid this potentially damaging teaching technique, maybe come up with a strategy for your students to monitor their own behavior. Create a red, yellow, or green stoplight visual, or develop incentives for good behavior like a sticker or a star jar. Use nonverbal cues like a hand gesture or a look to redirect students, or move closer to the child and kneel down and whisper in their ear. Generally, create a culture of respect in your classroom so students who may become frustrated by these behaviors, calling out or interrupting other students, those students will have a positive outlet for voicing their concerns, either with you or even with the individual directly. In all cases, students will struggle with these behaviors at school and at home. Children will exhibit these behaviors in a wide variety of circumstances, and not just during the school day. In order for a child to be diagnosed with ADHD, teachers and medical professionals will observe the child and determine whether these behaviors have a negative impact on the child's ability to participate in school. They will rank the severity on a scale of mild to severe. Depending on the child's diagnosis, the school will make accommodations by creating an IEP, or an individualized education program. When making a diagnosis, clinicians and medical professionals are evaluating the child using the terminology maladaptive and inconsistent with developmental level. Clinicians attempt to evaluate the child on a scale of what's developmentally appropriate for that specific age. It can be difficult for clinicians to make a proper diagnosis, and human error is inevitable. Statistically, clinicians are more likely to diagnose boys than girls, so it's important to keep that bias in mind. However, it's also important to recognize that you yourself are not a doctor, and you should not suggest a diagnosis to families. Stick to discussing the specific behaviors that you observe, and come up with strategies or interventions for that child. Children with ADHD will experience a wide array of emotions and feelings as a result of their learning disability. It can be extremely difficult for children to navigate the expectations of their teachers and parents, and they may act out because they've been labeled as lazy or disruptive. Relationships with adults are often marked by tension, and children may become resentful or antagonistic as a result of not feeling successful or feeling like they've been set up for failure. Children may show signs of poor self-esteem, dysphoria, which is an intense feeling of depression, and as a result may experience temper tantrums. In order to support students with ADHD, as well as all of your students, you will need patience and perseverance. Patience to take a deep breath, count to 10, and calculate your next move. Perseverance to never give up, even when it seems impossible. Look for the small victories and make a list of the positive gains that you've made with that student. Ask a colleague for help and find someone to mentor the child who may have a fresh perspective. Create a positive relationship and build back the trust by offering some of these strategies, like taking short breaks, finding a quiet space, and sticking to a reliable schedule. Set aside time to meet with the child one-on-one and offer these pieces of advice, or even just inspirational facts, like the famous people who have ADHD listed here. Most importantly, act as a positive role model and communicate the benefits of ADHD, like having a passion and going after what excites you. We've discussed a number of the common challenges that students with ADHD face during the school day, and the out-of-school time environment presents a unique set of challenges for these students. When it's time to focus and complete homework during the after-school hours, students with ADHD will struggle with prioritizing assignments, creating a plan to get their homework done, and starting on the first assignment. Because they are distracted, they will likely distract other children and fidget, which could get them into trouble or be a safety concern. In the out-of-school time environment, staff must work together to embrace a new paradigm about how to support students with ADHD. It can be tempting to fall into the trap of avoidance and redirection. For example, if you know your student struggles with sitting down, you would have the best intentions in trying to avoid this as much as possible. However, the child will need to identify successful strategies for coping with their ADHD. Instead, try to think about the child's strengths and needs. Identify the things that they're good at or that they're excited about, and help them identify areas for improvement. Normalize this experience by making it clear that every individual has their strengths and their weaknesses. And have this conversation with everyone, so it's not just the students with ADHD who are receiving this attention. To encourage awareness among staff, take time to meet regularly and discuss some of the challenges. Help one another brainstorm solutions and share stories or examples to visualize the problem. Shift your thinking and make a commitment as a staff team to stick to positive descriptors or goals to inspire action. Problem solve together and use a visual flowchart to make sure you account for all of the information. Plan ahead for problems that may arise and decide how the staff as a team will handle them. For example, what's the structure for talking about children with challenges? How will you address your frustrations in a positive way so staff don't pile on with negativity? How will you handle parent concerns? And is there a system for tracking this communication? Remember, a well-thought-out plan will save you. Without a plan, children will sense weakness and the behaviors will start to seem impossible. In addition to creating a strong staff culture of acceptance and awareness, children need to be taught how to recognize and address the differences they see. Go online and research lessons that teach children anti-bullying techniques, and avoid highlighting the differences between students. Normalize the learning disability and help children feel more comfortable with their unique set of challenges or areas for improvement. Observe small group activities or those informal learning moments, and provide targeted praise to children who exhibit teamwork, self-awareness, or courageousness. Assign groups of mixed abilities and choose activities that highlight the child's strengths. Praise sensitivity and supportiveness whenever you see it, and use a positive incentive system like a value star to create a positive culture. Have the children participate in team building activities to build a sense of camaraderie, and unite the group under a class contract or code of conduct. If problems arise, quickly shift gears and discuss possible interventions, like an activity called Walk a Mile in My Shoes. Talk to the families and involve the child if possible. Brainstorm activities that will showcase their strengths. Work with staff to identify mentors, either a peer or an adult, who can help that child develop self-awareness strategies and skills for working with groups.